Every journey has a beginning, and mine started far from the mainland. It started on an island where the sky felt close and the dream of flight felt impossible. This podcast is my story. All the challenges, the breakthroughs, and the people that I've met, the setbacks, and the moments that shaped who I am today. Hi, I'm Faafetai, the Soaring Samoan, your host. Welcome to episode 1 of the FOUCAST. Talofa and welcome everyone to the first episode of the FOUCAST. This is a moment that's been a long time coming, and I'm very excited that it's finally here. To all of you who have been with me from the very beginning, thank you so much for your continued support, all of your patience during the previous year of inactivity on this particular account. Your patience is appreciated. This is a new beginning, and I'm happy to share it with you. And if you're new to my channel, and you like the content that you're going to be watching and you find it informative and you find it educational, please go ahead and consider giving us a like, follow our social media pages that I'll be listing in the description box below, and go ahead and hit the notification button on this video so that way you can be notified the next time we post a video on YouTube. I need to be completely honest with you about something before we get started here. The next 2 episodes are the ones that are very intimidating for me. That's because these are the episodes that I talk about myself. I believe in being transparent and also getting to know the person who is sitting in front of the camera and behind the microphone and why I'm passionate about sharing my journey. This is when I get to tell you for the very first time how my aviation career began and the winding path that brought me here today. But you'll have to bear with me. My wife jokes about the fact that when I tell stories, I would always begin by saying, long story short. However, the stories are never short. That's why I'll be breaking this down into a 2-part episode, part 1 being today's video. I'll be sharing with you the moment that piqued my interest, the challenges, a life-changing move that opened doors for me, the hurdles, and the sweet success of finally becoming a licensed pilot. And in a future episode, we're going to move into part 2. That's where we talk about life after initial training, the job search, time building, the opportunities, the downfalls that determined my path. So I encourage you to get comfortable, sit back, relax, and enjoy because episode 1 begins now. Like many pilot stories, mine started somewhat similar with the fact that most of us got bit by the bug in our early years. Mine happened on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, almost 6,000 miles away from where I'm sitting today. That's my home country of American Samoa. I was just 7 years old when I took my first flight on a de Havilland Twin Otter that departed the Pago Pago International Airport on a 30-minute flight west to the Whangalii Regional Airport on the island of Upolu. And I do remember it like it was yesterday. I was seated behind the open flight deck in clear view of the 2 pilots who were operating the flight. I watched their every move. I mean, all the way until the moment we took off. When the plane lifted off the ground, my body sinking into my seat, and then staring out the window, watching land move farther away from me, and the wings pierce the clouds. I mean, that breathtaking moment is when I immediately fell in love with flying. And that also would be the very first time of many flights that I took on that route between 1997 and 2006. Here's something else that is good to know and note. There are no established training infrastructures in the South Pacific that accommodates the needs of those who want to become pilots. And I believe at one time the Kingdom of Tonga had such an establishment, and I'm not sure if it's still there or not. And if you have any information in regards to what I'm talking about, would you please go ahead and write a comment below? I will love to look into it a little bit more if it still exists. The fact of the matter is if you wanted to become a pilot, you had to move overseas. And knowing that piece of information and being as young as I was, I really didn't bother pursuing it any further because I knew that this is what's needed to be done. And at that moment, it was impossible. But the desire and dream was still there. And here's a cool memory that I'm going to share with you. I remember when I used to collect these the wired hangers, clothing hangers, and I would form them into the shape of a pilot hat. And then once I got the form somewhat okay, I would go and find some fabric left over from my mom's sewing kit, and then I would cover it and use hot glue gun, and then I would hot glue the fabric to the frame, and that would be my pilot hat. I would even find the cardboard rolls in the middle of a toilet paper. I would cut it down the middle,
and then I would clip him to my shoulders, and the lines were drawn in with Sharpie or crayons, whatever I could get my hands on. Another memory, too, would be when I would visit my grandmother during breaks from school, and I would sit in her office because she would be my ride home, and she would hand me a piece of paper with coloring pencils or whatever she had, and I would draw a picture of an airplane, more specifically the forward section of the airplane, which had the flight deck. And then I would draw a stick figure pilot sitting in the flight deck with an arrow pointed towards it with my name on it. And here's a fun fact. Up until my grandmother passed away, I was informed by her that she was still in possession of those pictures. I mean, it was fun. It's what kept the spark alive. That spark would translate to an even bigger dream, and that's when my family finally had the opportunity to move to the U.S. mainland in 2006. We settled in Long Beach, California, and it was game on for me. I mean, I didn't have a mentor or knew anyone that was a pilot, so I did what needed to be done, and that was starting my research, right? All the local flight schools in Long Beach. I made phone calls, I asked questions and scheduled visits, and at this point, I was a sophomore in high school. 2 more years to prepare is the mindset that I had. So during my senior year, I was very fortunate to receive an opportunity that I did not think I was going to get. And that was an internship through the Unified School District's Work Experience Initiative, which provided high school seniors with opportunities to gain real-world experience in the workforce. The organization that I was awarded an internship with, after a series of interviews, was the Boeing Company. Yes, the Boeing Company. Now imagine my surprise. It was almost like it was meant to be. I was working in the engineering department throughout my entire senior year, where I learned how to review schematics. I attended department meetings and even participated in delivery ceremonies where I got to witness something so cool that I'd never seen in my life before. And that was a C-17 Globemaster doing a low pass over the company while all the employees stood in the parking lot and did what is called a salute on their departure. That's when the aircraft would swoop low above the factory, and then they would dip their wings. And I found out that it was a form of respect, a final thank you to the people that have worked hard on making sure that that aircraft was able to fly. So the plan was set. Information gathered, decision, well, still needs to be made on which institution that I was planning on attending. And there were 3 non-negotiable items on my list. Number 1, the flight instructor. Now, for all the CFIs who are watching this, don't misinterpret what I'm about to say, because as a non-CFI myself, quite frankly, congratulations, you've earned that covenant rating. However, I just knew what I wanted. I wanted an instructor who was already established in the industry at a place of employment of their desire, and that they were instructing because they enjoyed it. I didn't want to feel rushed, or I didn't want to feel pushed when I wasn't ready to fly because they needed the hours themselves. I needed someone who was fully invested in my success without any distractions. Number 2, aircraft maintenance. In flight training, the machine you fly becomes your classroom, and I needed to know that if the aircraft that I was scheduled to fly isn't available, that there was a backup, and most importantly, do they have a maintenance program that is compliant with all the regulations? And then number 3, student experience. I wasn't looking for a place where I could go and have a good fun and just pass. I needed a place that delivered effective methods in teaching their material, especially for someone who thrives on practical application. I was also looking for a place that provided mentorship, ground schools, and that encouraged study groups. And I encourage anyone who is currently in that position today to do the same thing, right? Find 3, 4, maybe 5 things that are important to you, things that are non-negotiable to you. Write them down, put it on a piece of paper, and then let that be the guiding pillars when making your decision. These things are uniquely tailored to you, and it's different for every single pilot. Now, given the parameters that I set for myself into account, I quickly came to the decision to apply to one place, and that was the ATP Flight School. Keep in mind, this was between 2009 and 2010, and back then the program was not as expensive and not as long as it is today. Submitted my application for the Airline Pilot Career Path Program, which was a 6-month program with a price tag of $69,000, and this was tailored for those who had no experience, and they would take you all the way through to your commercial ratings and your flight instructor ratings. The first attempt was unsuccessful. This was due to the lack of credit, and that made sense. I was only 19 years old, and it required a cosigner, which was totally fine, right? No worries. My grandparents were willing to take on that responsibility. Regather the information again, resubmit it, and that application was also unsuccessful. Reason, unknown. Now, after multiple communications with the flight school, I was told that I needed to contact Sallie Mae, which was the bank at the time, directly. And I swear it was like trying to call them to tell them about their extended warranty because no one answered. This became a huge punch to the gut for me, right? I was starting to get discouraged, but it was fine. I kept pushing on. So when I came back to the school, I was told, well, maybe it's because of the economic recession, and that I was also not the only person who was struggling with that problem. So after multiple attempts to reach the bank without any success, I decided that perhaps this might not be the right time for me. And then I began looking for an alternate. And that didn't take long. So shortly after I decided to go back to school, I enrolled at the Long Beach City College in 2010 as an undecided major. But through the recommendation of a faculty member who I had a small conversation with while waiting for another class, I did something that I thought I would never be interested in, and I pursued a career in broadcast journalism, putting aviation to the side for now. I figured, well, if I wasn't going to be a pilot yet, why not be on TV or on radio and save up so I can pay for training in the future? And that's exactly what happened. In 2012, my family and I moved back to American Samoa, where I took up a job with the local television station KVZK-TV. I started off as a news department intern, and I was tasked with writing the segment introductions for the anchors to read on camera and operating the teleprompter machines live during our broadcasts. A few weeks in, I was then given an opportunity to become a regular field reporter. I did that for a little bit before landing my first opportunity as a co-anchor. Now, the market in American Samoa to earn a living in the world of television is nowhere near that of a small network here in the United States. But after 6 months, I decided to take that experience and perhaps try it somewhere else. And that somewhere else just so happened to be Hawaii when my entire family decided to move once again. So in August of 2012, we made the move, and I immediately began the job hunt. I applied to all the news stations on Oahu, submitted my demo. I never heard from any of them. And that's exactly what I expected, right? Think about it. Even America's smallest station is affiliated to one of the biggest networks in the country. And there's no way they'll take someone from a government-owned, unaffiliated station that they've never heard about, right? And I was okay with it because it allowed me the time to revisit my dream, which was aviation. So later that month, I came across an ad for a part-time ramp agent position with Hawaiian Airlines. I went ahead, I submitted an application for it, and found out shortly that I was invited to an in-person interview at the Honolulu International Airport. I went in, I interviewed, and then I was offered the position. I started working for Hawaiian Airlines in mid-October, and during my time with ramp service, I learned how the operation worked from below the wing, and it was a unique and humbling experience. Since most of us travelers, when we go to an airport, we never see what's going on outside of the terminal. Being able to see the operations from that perspective, I mean, it required a lot of coordination, manual labor, and swift decision making. But my desire was still to be in the flight deck. So I began looking for other opportunities within the organization. I began applying to in-flight service as a flight attendant each time they had an opening. And all of those attempts were unsuccessful until a position for a full-time customer service agent came up. I figured, well, if I can't be part of the crew, then I can at least be the one who is there at the gate to greet them and check them in as they reported for duty. I mean, I saw that as an opportunity to network with the pilots. And so I threw my name in the hat, and when the bid closed, I was notified a few days after that I was awarded that position. I worked as a CSR from 2013 to 2015, 2 years, 3 multiple positions within the organization, and memories that I cherish to this day. Now, one of those internal positions was becoming a ramp controller for the inter-island ramp. This was a formal designation of the ramp where the inter-island traffic for Hawaiian Airlines and other smaller carriers were operating in and out of. And that designation was given during the first phase of the Honolulu Airport remodernization project. And a few of us from Hawaiian Airlines, a few from the Department of Transportation, we were all there and trained to handle the traffic flow in and out of that ramp. I mean, it was a position that required a lot of coordination, a lot of planning, and I enjoyed it. It was high stress environment, but I learned a valuable lesson that a skill that I was going to take with me if I was planning on becoming a pilot. Now, though I enjoyed every single moment and day on the job with Hawaiian, my heart still yearned for the flight deck. And when the right time came, I decided that it was time to make another move and pursue that dream of mine. I saved up some money. I looked up flight schools in Honolulu, found a place that was called the Wright Flight School, paid for an introductory flight, and went up in a Cessna 152 with the owner, who was also the CFI, on a short 45-minute session. Folks, I was hooked. That was it. I mean, that's the confirmation I needed then. But then again, I still had a hurdle that I had to go over, right? With the money that I had saved, there was absolutely no way I was going to afford training in Hawaii. So I went back to the drawing board and began looking in the mainland. And unfortunately, to no success, because nothing that was in the mainland would fit my situation. Then I had to start thinking about other options, other opportunities. How can I still pursue this dream through a different perspective, right? Then it dawned on me, well, why not try to be a flight attendant again? This time for carriers that operated on the mainland. That way I can live and work near a flight school that I choose. And I did just that. I applied to American, Delta, United, even Southwest, and I only heard back from one of them, and that was United Airlines. I flew to Houston in the beginning of June of 2015. I attended the in-person interview. Then I left hours later with a conditional job offer in hand. I returned to Hawaii, submitted my resignation on the 10-hour flight back, and 2.5 weeks later, found myself back in Houston starting week 1 of a 5-week training program. It was intense, very stressful, but felt so good to earn my wings in the end. I returned home to Hawaii, had a few days off with the family, and then I reported back to Newark, New Jersey for orientation. And this was very new to me. Mind you, I've never lived east of California before, ever in my life. So this was a new challenge, but also an exciting experience that I was willing to take on. And for the rest of 2015 and the first half of 2016, while living in New Jersey, my research didn't stop, right? I found out that there was an ATP location at the Morristown, New Jersey airport, and I was trying to figure out the logistics on how to attend a flight school like ATP while keeping a full-time job. Now, let me tell you this. You can't. Schools like that require 100% of your time. So that was very discouraging for me, but not enough to force me to quit just yet, until a financial burden that was put on me unexpectedly a few months later drove me to the end of the line. It was only then that I realized that this journey might be over. But saddened by the news, I prayed for the first time in a long time for another chance. And the next morning, I got a text from my wife, who was my roommate at the time, who was visiting with her family in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And after checking in with me, she asked, "Do you still want to be a pilot?" And I responded with a resounding yes, followed by a phone call. When she answered, she handed the phone to her dad, a Boeing 787 captain and line check airman for United at the time, with over 35 years of experience and also a flight instructor. He and I spoke for a bit, and he convinced me to come to Oklahoma for an intro flight. Got on a flight, flew to Tulsa, and after that intro flight, it was clear that I needed to move completely to Oklahoma if I wanted to train with him. This new beginning required a base trade and for us to gather all of our things from New Jersey at the apartment that we've had for the previous year and make our way back. So we both put in our base trades. We were awarded Houston, and we did a whopping 23-hour drive back to Oklahoma. We began flight training towards the end of 2016, and we flew every chance that we had. We went over materials for the written exam, and in addition, we prepared for my first solo flight. Everything was working out, right? One by one, each hour was logged, each lesson taught. We approached the scheduled date that we had set for the solo of October 18th, 2006. We woke up early that morning. We head over to the Okmulgee Regional Airport, and I successfully completed the solo sequence and received my sign-off to continue on with training. And I have to say, the moment I took off on that first takeoff, just by myself in the Piper Cherokee, I had flashbacks of my first flight. I mean, that moment came rushing back to me, and I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. Now, what made this moment special was the presence of my dad and my brother, who flew all the way from Hawaii to watch me solo. This was a milestone. We celebrated, we hopped in the plane, and head back to Tulsa. I trained every chance that I could, even while working full-time as a flight attendant. It made the process a little bit slower than I wanted it to be, but I wasn't complaining. I mean, I was flying, and I was able to keep my job. I knew that something is better than nothing. Now, paying for flight training out of pocket is tough, and I'm going to tell you now, I was very blessed. I had no money, but my in-laws knew my desire in my heart, and they wanted to do everything they could to help me achieve my dreams. I worked hard for an entire year. I earned my private pilot's license on June 19th of 2017, the day before my 26th birthday. This was the day that I became an official licensed pilot. I knew that there was no time to waste. So my father-in-law and I began instrument training right away, and we had no time to spare. We did as much studying as we did flying. And I tell you what, it all paid off one night. And I'm about to tell you another story here. A few days after learning and applying partial panel techniques, when we get into any of those situations, we found ourselves in one during the winter of 2017. We were attempting to fly my wife from Tulsa Riverside to Oklahoma City. That way she could catch a commute flight to work. It was a rainy evening, but safe to operate in. My father-in-law owns his own aircraft, a Cessna Centurion Turbo 210, which is a turbocharged and complex aircraft. Now, because I was learning instrument, this would be the perfect opportunity to do some training while we were flying, 20 minutes to Oklahoma City. So I was told to sit in the left seat and my father-in-law in the right seat while my wife occupied the passenger seat behind us. After our pre-flight, we started the engine, we taxied out to the runway, and Riverside Tower cleared us for takeoff off of runway 19 left. I advanced the throttle, we began the roll, and rotation speed, I pulled back on the yoke, and off we went. The first call that came out of my mouth was positive rate, gear up. But shortly after that command, we experienced an electrical failure. All of this was happening while we were in IMC. My wife jumped right to her training. She got a flashlight. She turned it on, shone it in the front. I was flying the aircraft. It's the first time that I'm put in a real life situation. All I had in mind was keep the wings level, keep climbing, and use what we have. And my father-in-law got on the phone. He remembered he had the number directly to the tower and called them because we were still at low altitudes and was able to get a hold of them. So we communicated with ATC via the telephone while I was flying on our way to Oklahoma City. At one point, we finally got above the clouds, but that experience taught me the value of the rating that I was working towards, and I wanted to learn everything that I could. So January 27th of 2018 came around the corner, and that's when I became an instrument-rated pilot, and I didn't want to stop. I mean, I could see the finish line and wanted to just press on. However, it was at that time that my father-in-law became busy with his job as a line check airman for the airline, and that had very little time together. So I was told, go to the airport, find an instructor in the flight school who's willing to take you on as a student and do everything Part 61. And that place was the Tulsa Community College Flight Department. I visited with the school, enrolled in the program, and began training with them in the Cessna 172 Skyhawk. Really sweet airplane. It was equipped with a Garmin G1000. Exactly a year from the day I received my private pilot's license, which was on June 19th of 2018, I became a commercial pilot. And I had that in commercial single-engine land. It was the greatest moment of my life. I mean, I came to the realization that I finally achieved something that I had set my heart to for many years. I took the moment in with my father-in-law, who was there to witness the event, my wife, who was pregnant with our first son, and my instructor, who were all present, awaiting the end of the check ride. We celebrated the occasion, took a short break from training. Now, in most instances, flight schools would start off with the multi-engine commercial rating first, then they would move on to the single-engine add-on. However, during all the time that I had to research, it was obvious that it would be cheaper to start off with the single-engine commercial, then multi to follow, especially as a Part 61 student. Because of the success I had with TCC and the instructor that I'd been working with, I chose to continue with them. And 26 hours later, I was ready for the check ride. But it didn't go the way I wanted it to go. My first hurdle, that first attempt, was a failure, which will be a story for another time. The second attempt took place on the 21st of October, 2018, and that one was a success. Not all was lost, because later that same month, on Halloween Day, October 30th of 2018, I was in Pompano Beach, Florida, starting training as a Cessna Caravan First Officer for Part 135 operator of Southern Airways Express. That was the moment, the fruit of my labor, dreams and aspirations, all the goals, the hard work over the years. This is where it all began. And folks, this is also where we will end today's podcast. If you're someone that's looking at becoming a pilot, planning is key. Do the research. Find out what's most important to you and your success. And then find those who will be in your corner to root you along the way and are there to support you every single step. It's inevitable that there will come a time when you feel like giving up, whether that's a check ride failure or a financial burden, but it's what you do next is what shapes the path that you're going to be going down. The biggest one that I'm sure I share with many is the financial aspect of flight training. And I'm going to mention this and give them the acknowledgement now. I would not have made it through private pilot, instrument, and commercial pilot ratings if it weren't for my in-laws. They funded my training without any spite or hesitation, and even though we made a deal in the beginning that they would take care of the finance until I made captain at a good-paying job and that I would start paying them back then, they would later surprise my wife and I over dinner at Texas Roadhouse, celebrating my commercial pilot achievement, that my debt was forgiven. And I promised one thing in return, that I would take care of their daughter, future grandchildren, and that one day, should my kids decide to want to fly and find themselves in the same situation that I found myself in, that I would be willing to help them. So you see, this journey of mine definitely was down a winding path, but it was because of those twists and those turns that I was able to forge my way through, and I hope the same for you. Folks, don't forget to like this video, share it, and select the notification button so you're updated each time I post a video. And if you have any questions or any concerns regarding today's episode, please go ahead and leave a comment below, and I'll be sure to respond to you accordingly. Thanks again for stopping by. And be sure to tune in to our next episode where we continue the journey in part 2 of my story. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your families. Be safe. And as always, I'm Faafetai, the Soaring Samoan. You're watching the FOUCAST, and you're cleared to disconnect.